Okay, here we are with our my latest video. I think this one will be short. This one's going to be on the W.H. Auden in memory of W.B. Yeats, and also something about metaphors that came up in the discussion on the Auden poem, and also in the You Make the Figure discussion board as well. Um, I think for the most part, I think you guys did a really good job responding to the questions that I had on the poem. Not all of you've done it, so make sure you don't lose track of that. Don't lose track of the assignments. We've had a really good start to the quarter, so we need to keep going, keep our momentum going. And the same applies for me too. So I have to remind myself of that also. Um, then there's a great the names involved here. There's some confusion. So, for example, the poem is called "In Memory of W.B. Yeats," and the poet is W.H. Auden. This is a English British academic literary convention of the sort of the end of the 19th century and throughout the 20th century, where writers would refer to themselves by their initials. There's a famous poet around the turn of those centuries called A.E. Housman. I was just reading about hearing someone talk about a famous scholar about ancient religions who was called G.R.S. Mead. One of the translators of one of my favorite philosophers was someone who went by G.E.M. Anscombe. So it's something that those folks did. I think it's not as popular now as it used to be, but there are still some British English academics that still do that, literary types that still do that kind of thing. So there's that W.B. Yeats, W.H. Auden. That can be a little bit confusing. Also, earlier we read a poem by John Keats, and I've got a quick a slide here to help us understand that. And this is one of the great pronunciation confusions here of English literature. The dead guy that Auden's poem is talking about, and who's also the poet who wrote Sailing to Byzantium, our latest discussion. That's one of his poems, is Yeats, and it's pronounced like Yates. Okay? The guy who wrote On First Looking into Chapman's Homer is Keats, and it's pronounced Keats. Now notice the two words are spelled almost exactly the same, except for the different first letter, but they're pronounced dramatically different, and that's the excitement of English for you. So remember, Yeats is like Gates, and Keats is like cheats. That's what you can. So if you've got that down, those different pronunciations, you're already miles ahead on the literary game. Okay, and I think there's one more thing. Then it's a figure of speech thing. Here, I'm going to try to do this on the PowerPoint here, and a couple people mentioned. So, for example, one of the metaphors that was pointed out in the discussion board on In Memory of W.B. Yeats was Dead of Winter. Someone identified that as a figure of speech. And that's a very good example, because winter is not a living thing, so it can't be dead. And even if it were a living thing, it's really hard to say what the dead of winter would be. It's not a real literal thing. Okay. Now the interesting thing is, like, here's a figure of speech that we've all heard of. I think it's something that we've all heard. And in fact, anything, if you want to say it here, let me see if I can get this and get the accent going here correctly. If you want to sort of critique this figure of speech, you might even say it's a cliche. okay, because it's one that you've heard a lot before. You've heard often before. And in fact, if I were going to critique W.H. Auden here, I would say you were kind of you kind of that wasn't the most creative figure of speech to come up with. He kind of resorted on something that we all knew. He wasn't very inventive when it came to that figure of speech. Oh, here, I just saw it there. Where was it? Right there. Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. Okay, there we go. I got it. Cliche. There we go. Spelled it correct. So, in fact, this is something I told the other class, the in real life class. We had a discussion about how I actually read something where someone said, a scholarly type said that he doesn't think that the In Memory of W.B. Yeats is that good a poem. And one of the things he complained about is that the Auden's use of cliches in it. And so one of the things you could say about a cliche is a cliche quite often is a metaphor that's gotten used so often that we stop thinking of it as a metaphor and we actually start thinking of it as literal. So when people say dead of winter, they don't really think in terms of they're making a literal, they're making a metaphor. They think of it, they're talking about an actual thing. And the technical term for this when this happens is dead metaphors. So these are things that originally started off as metaphors, lively, creative metaphors, but they got used so often that they're now referred to as dead metaphors. And I think, and some of you, when I did sort of asked you to come up with figures of speech, a number of the things you guys came up with were what you would technically call dead metaphors. That's not at all critical. That's not at all a criticism of what you guys did. In fact, I like the fact that you guys brought those into the discussion, because that shows you how a lot of the times, a lot of the language that we're using is metaphor, even though we might not necessarily recognize it. And I think that's a good thing, speaking as an English teacher, a writing teacher, that's a good thing to recognize that about the language. Okay, and so I think that's it for today's video. I think I successfully made a short one. Okay, talk to you soon.